If you're a health or life coach who's finding niching and identifying your ideal client really tricky, perhaps you're wondering, do I actually need to have a niche? Well, that's the question I'm going to be answering in today's episode of the Wholehearted Business Show. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show, we're talking all about niching and that big question, do you actually need to have a niche as a health or a life coach? Now, my answer might not be as clear as you might think it is. We're going to explore this a little bit. But before we delve into that, I just want to talk a bit about what niching actually is. And a niche is basically when you define who it is and what it is that you're going to work around. The way that I like to think about niching is to be really clear on the set of problems that you support people to solve, the transformation that you help them undertake, and the aspirations that they might achieve as part of that transformation. That's my preferred way to think about niching. If you can kind of get clear on that, that is really, really helpful. I actually remember having a call with a former mentor and she asked me what problems I solve for people, and I just burst into tears because I had no idea. And that felt really, really challenging. So having an understanding of that is really, really helpful around niching. That's the way that I approach niching. Lots of other people have different ways of approaching it, but for me, that's the way that I like to do it. On top of that, you might have an ideal client type. So you might define your ideal client in terms of demographics, who they are, what kind of work they do, their age, things like that. And I still think that's valid. But actually, when you get clear on the problems that you're solving, the transformation that you're creating and the aspirations you're helping people achieve, then lots of different kinds of people could be experiencing those problems, and therefore the ideal client stuff isn't as relevant, but I still think it's something that's useful to layer in. There's also another thing that I like to put into this equation, which is the client journey in terms of their own journey around how they kind of identify with their problems and the way that they undertake transformations. So that's kind of the way that I look at niching. And if you want to get more and look at that in more depth, Wholehearted Business is the place to be. We've got all of the courses and things that I've got around niching are in Wholehearted Business. I will put a link in the description. Come and get on the wait list because we are opening again in March. That is the place to be. If you are listening to this, watching this, and you're thinking, I'm really struggling with niche, then Wholehearted Business is at 100% the place to come into. Anyway, that's kind of how I relate to niche. Now, there's lots of valid reasons why you might be struggling to identify what your niche is. Lots of people are very multi-passionate, and I am very multi-passionate. And when you try to niche in a certain way, that can feel really uncomfortable if you are one of a multi-passionate person who has lots of interests and is very creative. I'll link to an episode of the show where I talk about niching as a multi-passionate person. So again, there's ways that I would personally approach niching which will give you freedom within your kind of multi-passionate nature. And I think a big part of this conversation is who you are as a person and what it is that you need in order to show up in your business. Because, lots of business mentors, people like me, might talk about having very narrow, very specific niches, a very well-defined ideal client. And like I say, that there is a time and place for that. But if in doing that, you feel so restricted that you find it really difficult to show up, then that's not helpful either. So I think we have to kind of play with this a little bit and figure out what's going to be right for you. So there's the kind of multi-passionate side of it that can make it difficult to niche. There's also your kind of mindset around it. And I think where a lot of people struggle to niche is because when we do niche and when we kind of come out of our shell and say, this is what it is that I do as my work as a coach, you're kind of announcing to the world that, hey, I know my shit in this area. I know my shit. I know what I'm talking about. I have some expertise in this. And that can trigger a lot of mindset stuff as well. So identifying whether or not that's an issue, that can be really important in this conversation too. The other thing that can make it difficult to niche is simply the stage of business that you're at. And I think when you are in those early stages of setting up a coaching business and running a coaching business, you might feel like it's very difficult to decide to go down a certain direction because you might change your mind later on. You might just not have worked with enough clients to identify what it is that you want to do. And that can feel quite overwhelming as well. And again, there are ways that we can manage that and we can work with that so that you do eventually get to a place where you can confidently niche. And ultimately, the truth is, A lot of things around business do become easier when you have a strong, profitable niche. I will link to an episode of the show that I've done around how to choose a profitable niche, so you can go and check that out for all the information around that. So the upshot of all of this is, it is helpful if you have a niche. It does make a lot of things in business more helpful. However, if you are multi-passionate, if you find that your mindset's getting in the way, if you are just not at the stage of your business where you feel that you can niche, I'm here to say it's okay. You don't have to get really stuck into a super, super, super narrow niche if it doesn't feel comfortable yet. There are pros and cons, which we're going to go through in a second, but I'm a big believer of whatever you need to do to take forward action, that is important. And if you are feeling stuck, and I call it like niche procrastination, because it can be this thing that just blocks you from moving forward. And it really did for me. I'll probably say a good couple of years. I felt really, really stuck around my niche and who I was here to help. And I felt like I was trying to help a lot of people around a lot of different things. And again, there's some mindset stuff around that I had to work through and figure out, because a lot of us want to help a lot of people, and that's okay. So really kind of understanding where you're at with all those things. But like I said, ultimately, if you feel that you can't move forward, it's okay not to have a really narrow niche right at the start. So what do we do instead if we don't have a niche? If it's okay, perhaps, to not go super direct with the niche and stuff right at the start. And actually, I have quite a bit of an opinion on some of this as well, because I feel like part of the niche kind of discussion needs to recognise that the need to niche, or the recommendation to niche, is very much based around the way that our kind of late stage capitalist society is set up. And it is about having to put ourselves in these little boxes that are consumable for people. And that kind of irks me a little bit about the whole niche conversation. And because we're all operating in this society and culture, it does work. So that's kind of my own personal tension with niching, because ultimately we're all multifaceted human beings. And I do believe that we can have businesses that are set up to serve the way that we want to show up in the world. And I do think we can do business in a way that is designed for that. But it is trickier in a lot of ways. So hopefully this is making sense so far. Having a niche, if it feels natural and good to you, absolutely do it. Yes. It's kind of how we box ourselves into nicely consumable products for our consumer society. But because of that, and because we're operating in this place, it does work to make money, and it affects our pricing. And again, I've done that episode of the show where I talk about having a profitable niche. We have to face the fact that this is where we're operating. However, if you are not ready to niche, if you are feeling stuck around niching, you can still move forward without what some other people would look at and say is a really defined niche. And I've kind of had this conversation with a couple of clients recently, because I feel like for a lot of people, your niche is something that kind of evolves really, really naturally. And I think one way that you can approach this is by viewing your coaching business in the same lens that a lot of counsellors and therapists view theirs, or the way that they put together their services, which is, when you look at a counsellor's or a therapist's website, not all of them again, but a lot of them, they will kind of say on their websites that they help people around a lot of different difficulties that they might be facing. And then they charge, they are selling counselling or therapy. Now, coaching's not quite in the same space as those services, because the outcomes, people have not quite got their heads around the outcomes that coaching can help them with in the same way that counselling and therapy does. And I think eventually we will get to a place where that is the thing. So there's no reason why you can't talk about your coaching services in the same generalised way and actually sell coaching in the same way that counsellors and therapists sell counselling and therapy. There are downsides to that in terms of how much you might be able to charge. And I've got a brand new pricing workshop. I'm going to put the link to that as well, because actually the ways that you might charge is going to be different around this. So do go and check out the pricing workshop. I'll put a link to that in the description, because it's awesome. But there's some big conversations and some big understandings around what I call in the pricing workshop your max market value, which, when you understand that, is really, really important, because again, it comes into how profitable your business can ultimately be, how it looks for your lifestyle, all of those kind of big questions. So one way of tackling the difficulty around niching is to actually just present your coaching services as coaching. However, the difficulty with that is that people are not actively seeking out coaching in the same way that they're seeking out therapy or counselling. But again, depending on what your marketing looks like around it, that's the option. There is an option to do that. And if that's enough to get you out the starting blocks, like I've been using this term quite a lot with clients recently, because what you need to do to get yourself out the starting blocks is not the same thing that you will be doing after 6 months, after 12 months in your coaching business. But I'm a big believer in just doing what you need to do to get yourself out the starting blocks. And if that means that you are charging per hour and maybe you have a package that isn't that well defined yet, that's fine, because it gets you out the starting blocks and it gives an accessible point for your people to work with you. So that's an option if you have not got a very well defined niche. The other thing as well is, and I love this term, and again, this kind of like when I talked about how I get a bit irked with like the reason that we have to niche, is seeing yourself as the niche and actually seeing the way that you kind of put your interests and stuff together as the niche initially can actually be quite powerful. So particularly if you have, and I've got a few different clients at the moment who very much fit this, like have quite a strong personal story, have some concepts that you've kind of come up with yourself throughout your own kind of transformation, but you've had your own transformation, but you don't want to narrow down like in the ways in which you apply that, then it's totally fine to actually just really work around the niche, like your way of putting things together is the niche. And a really good way just to start to experiment with this and explore with this is to start to create content, but without any specific kind of restraints on the way that you do that. And I think there's something incredibly freeing. And often what happens is you do start to develop a niche around this because you start to see the content that you enjoy creating and what works and what doesn't. So I think this is a really, really fun thing to play with, is just creating content because it's content that you want to create, and then starting to find the commonalities, the themes, and starting to allow your niche to come out of that a little bit as well. So if you're really struggling with niche and you are wondering, do I actually have to have one? The answer is eventually you probably do if you want to be profitable in this industry. However, you can certainly start off with a much more general approach. And again, what that might look like is offering coaching as coaching and just calling it life coaching, health coaching, it being very general and actually just selling coaching. And that's okay. It has its downsides, but if it gets you out the starting blocks, that's okay. It might also look like you identifying that you are the niche and actually really tapping into what kind of things do I want to create content around for my marketing, and allowing that to call in the right people. I think there's quite a few people who are in the coaching industry who have got really strong, again, just your concept of what it is that you're here to do is really strong, and just putting out content out there, it's going to draw the right people in as long as it's put in the right places for people to find it. And as long as you're doing like that element of work so that people are going to see it, you will pull in the right people and they will get you. Another part of this conversation that I want to get into too is just a reminder that when potential clients are interacting with you, they are not simply interacting with like one element of your business on its own. And again, I think this is where niche and messaging becomes really important. And again, messaging might be another way that you can define your niche without having to get like right into the nitty-gritty niche stuff. So when someone is interacting with your business, it's unlikely that they are reading one email, seeing one freebie, looking at your homepage on its own. It's probably that they are seeing a multifaceted part of your business. They might be reading a blog post as well. They might be seeing a social media post. They might be watching a video of you on YouTube. That is what gives them the full kind of energetic impression of you and your business. So if niching in terms of like having to write copy for your website feels really heavy, or niching in terms of having to define your coaching package feels really heavy, here's a reminder that it's not just about the copy that you have on one single page. It's about a much bigger picture that you create with your business. And again, this is something that I support people to do inside Wholehearted Business. So do check that out, because we look at how we create that foundation for your business and how we kind of build a system around that is going to bring people into your world and have them convert into clients and customers. So just to summarize, we've talked about what a niche actually is, the way that I tend to define a niche, and whether or not you actually have to have one. And it's a bit of a two-part answer to that. Part of it is, yes, it makes sense for a lot of different reasons to have a niche. However, if you are a multi-passionate person who's coming up against a massive block, if you find that you've got a mindset block in terms of like really owning an area of expertise, if you are a newer coach and you're just not sure where you want to focus, then it's okay if you have a period of experimentation, of perhaps just selling coaching as pure coaching. If you need to just explore some content and play around with what kind of themes and topics that you want to create content around, and then revisit it, it's absolutely fine if you want to do that. And you know what, that's, again, it's like taking the pressure off. What I would say is if you do identify that you've got some mindset stuff going on, that you want to overcome that you want to kind of look at some of these things, because we can really tie ourselves in knots around this topic, then do seek out some support, because it will keep you stuck at a certain point, as frustrating as that is. And again, you know, to a certain degree, like, you are the niche. Your combination of putting together different topics, your combination of the journey that you've had, you know, the way that you support people, like all of that stuff all comes together. So if it feels pressured when it comes to like I say, writing homepage copy or writing the sales copy for your coaching package or whatever, try and remember that people are likely seeing a much broader picture of you and your business when they come to decide around like either reaching out to work with you as a coach or, you know, become a customer or whatever. It's a much broader sense of who you are that they will get, rather than just reading a single page on your website. So I hope that's been really, really helpful. Just a reminder of some of the links that I've mentioned in today's show. Wholehearted Business is opening in March. Do get on the wait list. You will get the best price when we reopen. This is the place to be if you are a newish coach who is struggling with niche, who needs to build up some new systems and stuff so they can start getting clients. If you maybe getting a couple of clients but you want to start and kind of ramp that up, like, Wholehearted Business is the place to be. I teach a full client attraction system in that program. Come along and join us for that. It's over a year. It's amazing. Check out my new pricing workshop. Like, when I talk about max market value, when we think about how to price our services, there's a whole conversation in that workshop that is wonderful. If you get stuck around pricing, go and check that out. Check out the episodes of the show that I've done on niching, around having a multi-passionate niche and also around a profitable niche as well. Have a look at those. And finally, if you want to look at a system around attracting more clients, my Aligned Client Attraction System freebie is a good one to dive into as well. So I will also put a link to that. But I really hope that's been helpful, everyone. Please do let me know if you've got any questions around this topic. I know from experience that niching can be really, really challenging. So do get in touch if you need any support around it. If you're watching on YouTube, a reminder, please come and subscribe. I am trying to get my subscriber number over 1,000 subscribers in 2025. Please come and help me out. Do go and hit that subscribe button. And I will see you next week, guys. Take care. Bye.